Good day, everyone. This is Daniel Holzberger from Van Michael Salons, coming to you live from here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm actually here in my house right now. Our salons are open, and I was doing clients this morning, but came home to do this video just for a little more quiet and being able to step away. I'll be back in the salon right after this video. Well, I wanted to say hi to everybody. I wanted to let you know that I'm really excited to be doing this for Hairbrained. I love the entire Hairbrained community. Gerard has been a good friend of mine for, 20 years now, 20 plus years, and I really appreciate this opportunity to do a little bit of haircutting for everyone. I'm gonna do a fairly progressive haircut today. It's gonna be an undercut shape. It's going to be very wearable, however. It's not gonna be so edgy that nobody would want it. It's gonna mix between, the real progressive, stronger looks to the, it's gonna also be very wearable for in the salon as well. Basically, I'm gonna talk to you guys real quickly about where I got my inspiration. One thing that we're really big at Van Michael Salons about is actually communicating with our clients and with our models what we're gonna do, rather than just describing it, but actually giving some visuals. So I said, an undercut, disconnected haircut. Most of you hairdressers are immediately thinking something extremely crazy with a shaved undercut. But the truth of the matter is, my inspiration is this, Louis Brooks. You can't get much more classic and timeless than Louis Brooks with a really nice box bob that has a really strong fringe. I'm gonna create something like that. But then I was also definitely inspired by an image that I saw just off of Instagram last week. This was from Elevate Hair. And if you look at it, this is a much more progressive, stronger look of the exact same look. So I'm going to mimic both of these shapes as far as my ending result. However, I'm going to be doing quite a bit of undercutting, and it's going to be a very strong, edgy look and a great technique. I believe that all of you hairdressers at home can definitely work with. It's a very simple technique. A lot of times hairdressers try to make things too complicated. I'm a big fan of the acronym KISS, K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. And what I'm doing is a very simple shape. My sectioning pattern is extremely easy. Basically, if you look at my beautiful mannequin right here, I've taken a section just beneath the parietal ridge. If I look where the side and top of the head meet, I create a corner. This corner falls, let me show you guys. The corner falls right here. That's the actual parietal ridge. I'm gonna go just beneath the parietal ridge, working just beneath the crown, and then rounding back up, completely mirrored on the opposite side. And then through the top, I've sectioned off basically right at the top of the head. So this is the top of the head. This is where the comb leaves. This is going to be just the round of the head. That's going to be where my fringe section is going to fall in. Now, typically my fringes are a disconnected shape altogether, but in this shape, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to connect the fringe to my undercut. And that's how I'm going to start the haircut off. Not with the actual fringe, but with the undercut. A lot of times people try to make things extremely difficult. I'm gonna try to make this extremely easy. So while this is going on, I've got the comments right in front of me. Please ask any questions you'd like, anything that pertains to haircutting, anything that has to do with this shape, anything you wanna ask me. I'm very open to answering any questions you wanna know, but I wanna try to keep this as educational as possible. So the way I'm going to start this off, this haircut is I'm going to use very tight round graduation underneath the haircut. You think of round graduation, as soon as people say that, automatically people start thinking about a firefly or a wedge. This is going to be significantly higher in elevation, and it's going to be significantly tighter through the sides. Therefore, it's going to be a tight shape as opposed to a very wedge-like shape. It will build up some weight. Both of those images, Louis Brooks and the image that I got off of Elevate, both had a bit of width through the sides, which I think is great as long as you work with the bone structure of the person. So my disconnection will end up falling right in line with the cheekbone, basically the bottom of the cheekbone, above the jaw, so you can create some width there, which actually gives the visual of a contoured cheekbone. You know, Estee Lauder makes $1 billion a year selling blush, and the reason is because you want your cheekbone to be higher than the contour. You want it to be brighter. If you cut a bob at that shape, it will do that for you. So that's the way I'm going to go about working this shape. So my shape's going to start off with a very high vertical diagonal section. Basically, I'm going to look at the hairline. So this hairline is right about just above 45 degrees. I don't know, maybe 60, 70 degrees. If somebody's got a protractor and wants to get on the TV or get on the screen and figure out what it is, let me know. But it's a fairly high, number. It's not all the way up to 90 degrees. That would be right here. So it's going to be somewhere in between 45 degrees and 90. So I am going to take a diagonal back section that's very high. I'm sectioning it right to the front of the ear, combing this hair away, and clipping up against gravity. That way I can see my work, so that it stays very clean. And I'm going to try to make sure I have the right angle for you. I'm gonna pull this hair straight out from the head and cut with just a little bit of graduation. So you can see this hair at the top, it's gonna be cut, it's probably about an inch and a quarter long. And then at the bottom, it's gonna be very tight. Question already coming in, this is great. So Jonathan's asking me how to make curly hair easy and beautiful use for curling ironed hair. So this shape, on the underneath, you're not gonna really do any curling iron to. It's gonna be way too short because it's gonna be undercut. But through this top, if you create a very nice classic bob shape, there's no reason you can't have texture. A lot of people nowadays are really wearing their hair natural just because they don't have as many places to go and they don't wanna put the heat and the styling on their hair. They're trying to use a lot of just natural texture. I personally think that as much as possible, my shapes should be able to be worn smoothed out, natural, or curled. If you create a really nice, clean, strong shape with proper layering and proper graduation, you should be able to do all of that. So asking about how to make curly hair easy, the best way to make curly hair easy is to cut the haircut very clean and very precise. Don't make it, don't make big chunks out of the hair. Don't make overly texturizing the hair, because if the shape's not there, it can usually only be styled one way. So that's how I would say the best way to go with creating curly hair. So like I said before, I'm pulling this hair straight out. It has a slight bit of graduation because of the natural roundness of the head. Because the head rounds in right there at the temple, this is farther in than right at the hairline. So therefore, when I cut this extremely short, maybe a 1/4 inch long at the hairline, it's gonna end up being more like 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches long at the recession of the head, or right there at the, just beneath the parietal ridge. I did not section all the way up at the parietal ridge. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut, and I'm cutting extremely clean and extremely short. Now the big thing that I do with this is I'm cutting very clean, and I'm just resectioning with my fingers. I'm not cutting past that second knuckle because I can hold all of this section with my finger. My fingers are long enough for that. But my tension just past my second knuckle is extremely loose. I want to make sure that it stays consistent from the top piece here to the bottom here. And then if I see any little tag pieces, I can just take those off. Now this piece here, I do want to keep. And that's going to actually be the guide for my fringe when I move around through to the fringe section. But I'm going to work through the back right now. The way I'm working this is I'm taking parallel sections. So these are very vertical, slightly diagonal, and combing the hair back, clipping up against gravity. Making sure I can see my sectioning extremely clean. I'm going to pull out once again, and I'm continuing to work around the hair. and around the head. I'm not over directing back. I'm just kind of pulling straight out from the head. What that's going to do is it's going to actually give me a very flat panel on the sides. If you think about the head, the side of the head is flat. And once you get to this area here where your mastoid bone is, it starts to diminish quite a bit and becomes round. So this shape on the underneath will be very flat horizontally, but as I move behind the ear, it's going to round off and follow the head shape. That ends up creating a very tight shape. It also creates a very, it creates a small amount of graduation because of the head shape. And we want a little bit of graduation so that we have a little bit of weight and width with my disconnection that's going to hang over. I had mentioned both the image that I saw off of Elevate as well as the image from Louise Brooks. Both had width through the sides. This, because it has a slight bit of graduation, it will help push that hair out and add some width. I'm going to do my fourth section. So I'm really big on doing very clean work. What I find is usually every third to fifth section, depending on what area of the head I am working on, I like to cross-check. So on this section, this will be my fourth section. And the reason I'm going to cross-check here is because once I get to my next section, I'm going to be working into the back and to the bottom hairline. So I want to make sure that I'm nice and clean, nice and flat, right through the sides. Can you guys see? Just pulling horizontally straight out. And you can see on my fingers, there is hardly anything that's coming off. It's just a dusting to make sure everything is extremely clean. Actually, I just saw that a friend of mine, Becca Job, is watching. Actually, next month, we're doing another video for Hairbrained, and Becca is going to be doing the video. We're actually going to shoot right here in my house again. I'll help MC and cameraman it for her while she does a haircut. We haven't decided what we're doing just yet. We just started talking about that just this week. So next month, definitely tune in. She's a great hair cutter to watch. So now that I'm working my next section, I'm working into the nape. I'm working past the mastoid bone. And as I do, once again, I'm only cutting to my second knuckle, and each time I'm going to shift lower and lower. The one thing I'm gonna do now that it just changes things a touch is I'm gonna tilt the head. The reason I'm going to tilt the head is because your mastoid bone area or the occipital bone area, the hair that is underneath, dips in and the skin dips in. So I'm actually going to tighten the skin and I'm going to make it a little bit flatter of a line. That allows my fingers to lay in a little bit cleaner. And I'm getting a lot of people from all over the place. Hello to everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope everybody is doing well. Everybody is safe. I hope everybody is really enjoying the Hairbrained community and all of the education they've been putting out on both Instagram Lives and Facebook Lives. I think it's extremely helpful for everybody, especially because as hairdressers, man, we have like really short attention spans and we have really short memories on things, and we can tend to get, just uninspired very quickly. And luckily for all of us, there are companies like Hairbrained that are keeping us interested and keeping us inspired through all of these different shutdowns. So I really want to give them a round of applause when I say that they're helping me stay extremely inspired. That's one of the great things about the internet and all of the information that we're able to share. It's really nice to see other work around the world. So as I'm working through, I'm now just doing a mirror image. I'm sorry, not a mirror image. I'm doing a completely the same image, a duplicate image with each section as I work through the back of the head. And let me know, guys, if I need to move anything, if there's any If you're unable to see, I'm going to continue trying to pivot this mannequin so that you can see my fingers and what I'm cutting all the way through. I'm just refining this outline a little bit. I usually do my outline and detail work at the end of the haircut, but a lot of times with mannequins, once you cut it short, they start to jump up and dry a little bit, and you can kind of see it. And I think if I don't touch it up right when I'm doing it, I might just get a little frustrated, and it's one of those things that I would see over and over again. Can you comment on how you're holding your shears? Absolutely. So here's the deal about shears. It depends on what kind of shears you're using. Depends on whether you're using semi-offset, offset, or straight, or if you have one of those things that has the swivel thumb. I've never been able to use those whatsoever. But what I'm doing with the scissors is this. I am making sure that I'm as close as possible to my fingers without changing my wrist too much. So I've been doing hair for like 25 years now, and luckily enough, I've never had carpal tunnel, knock on wood. And a big reason is because I move my shears around, okay? I only move my thumb when cutting, okay? You have two blades. You have your still blade and your moving blade. So my moving blade is the only thing that moves, okay? It's kind of like when you're in beauty school, or not in beauty school, in high school, and you go to the library to go use a paper cutter, one blade still, one blade that moves, boom, clean cut. So by using only one blade moving, it makes a much cleaner shape. Now, while I'm doing that, I always want my blade right against my fingers. So I'm going to either be cutting palm to palm like so, or I'm going to be cutting, if I'm getting really close, I may switch my thumb around. So instead of holding the scissors like so, I'm actually flipping them and putting my thumb just in with the outside of my thumb, and I'm cutting down just so that I can get closer. That way I'm able to cut extremely clean right here in the nape. I'm able to get very tight. Up towards the top, you can see I've got about an inch, inch and a quarter of length. So I'm able to pull that out horizontally. I'm able to cut palm to palm, and my wrist stays straight. As I get into the bottom, what happens is I have to really wrench my wrist to make it into the nape, so I flip them around and I just cut a little bit tighter. You gotta have really sharp shears for that because you don't have as much tension or as much torque with your scissor, but if you've got properly tuned, properly sharp shears, it actually makes the world of difference. What make of scissors do you use? Somebody just asked me. These are actually Van Michael shears. Our salon makes our own shears. We actually private label for a number of the beauty schools out there. If you're ever interested in them, they're a great deal. I can, in the comments later, type in the website. It's just vanmichaelscissors.com. It's not very difficult. We weren't really brilliant in coming up with that name, but I'll put that in the comments later. Couple of other questions. Which brand is the best hair iron to use to make shiny and straight? Personally, there's a lot of really good brands out there. Our salons, we carry a company called Ergo, E-R-G-O, and I really like those for help smoothing out the hair. And then what's the difference between using scissors versus clippers? There's a big difference. Clippers, I don't ever use on this long of hair. Maybe on this down at the bottom. Generally speaking, for myself, I never use clippers any longer than a 2-guard, and a 2-guard is really pushing it that I'll use a 2-guard. I really use clippers when I'm trying to get really tight. Otherwise, I will do either scissor over comb, or in this case, where it's long enough that my fingers can hold, I am gonna actually cut with the scissor versus a clipper. But there's nothing wrong with clippers. In fact, I've really gotten into barbering in the last few years. We opened up a barber shop here in Atlanta, and I love using clippers. I found I started doing a lot of work as far as education through the British Barber Association, as well as working with Josh LaMonica and Menspire out of London. I've been over to London a few times now to take classes. I just went over in February to take a class at Menspire. They do amazing clippering work, but I feel like if hair is long enough to hold it, I'm gonna hold it with my fingers and use scissors versus clippers. That's just my personal preference. Couple of other questions. Oh, what kind of shears? Once again, they're Van Michael scissors, vanmichaelscissors.com. I will put the link in the comments when I finish this. It's literally just www.vanmichaelscissors.com. And they're great. They're really good priced. These are a VG10, which is about as good of a quality of metal as you can get, for $240. So they're not overpriced whatsoever. Van basically has a great contact. He has contacts all over the world, and he's not trying to gouge people. He's just trying to actually make, you know, really quality shears for the entire industry. So back to the question about how I'm holding my shears. I've flipped over because I'm getting really tight in the nape. I really like to get very close. Now I will do a touch of scissor over combing. And the way I do that is just go the opposite direction of how I cut. So my scissor over combing is actually just cross-checking my work. And I really want to cross-check my work, especially now that I've done about 5 more sections. And you can see it's nice and short, nice and clean, working around. Oh, hey, Mary Cromie's one of my favorite people, one of the most exciting people to ever hang out with. She's saying, looks great. I love hearing from her. I haven't talked to you since you got married. Congratulations on your wedding. I hope everything is going great out in California for you guys. I know that Van just spoke with Robert at pretty great lengths the other day, and sounds like you guys are really doing great. I'm getting some love from South Africa. I guess it's probably evening there. So when I said good day to everybody earlier, I guess it's good evening to you. Another question, how many inches from Frank? The question about that, so it's gonna be a fairly short haircut. I had mentioned earlier that this piece at the very front is gonna be the guide for my fringe. And the images that I showed you for my inspiration were a fairly strong, short fringe. So I'm actually going to connect the fringe through here. So I wanted this to only be about 1 inch long. Now, depending on where it is on the head, if you notice, my sectioning dips down because the head rounds off. As it rounds off more and more, we're going to end up with more length through the top. So this length at the very top, still not long, is maybe 1.5 inches long, okay? And down in the nape, I'm gonna be extremely short. It's maybe 1/4 inch long, if that. It's just the width of the very tips of my fingers. So I'm doing my best to stay very close. And then I've been going over and doing a little bit of scissor over comb refining to it. There was a question earlier about clippers, and absolutely you can clipper hair underneath. And I know a lot of people that can clipper hair that's 2, 3, 4 inches long. That's just too much for me. I was trained many moons ago to just use my scissors, and I have a tendency to anything that I can hold with my fingers still cut with my scissors. I just find that it's a lot better for me if I cut with my scissors. And one thing I will do also once I'm done with this is in the comments I will post a head sheet, an image of each panel and the way that my the way that my sectioning was created. That way, if you guys want to try to attempt this at home, you can replay the video and definitely keep the head sheet right there with you so that you know what I'm doing. You and your husband, oh yeah, absolutely. Somebody's giving Mary some love as well. They are definitely the bomb. Talk about some of the most fun people to be around. Robert and Mary are great. Not only that, and I mean, Mary will attest to this, both of them are really hard workers. We had them in Atlanta to do our company meeting just a couple years ago, and I remember going into our salon at like, I don't know if it was 4 in the morning or what with Mary so that we could start setting some hair for their show. And man, they put on a phenomenal show. But both of them are great people and great workers and really inspirations for the entire industry. Opposite side, I've flipped my hands, okay? So this on the right side of the head, my fingers were pointed up, my thumb was pointed to the left and I was working around to the left. On the right side, my fingers are gonna be pointed down, my thumb's gonna point to the right, and I'm gonna work around to the right. So what that's saying is this: use your thumb as a guide in the direction that you want to work. And that's anytime you're underneath the parietal ridge for the most part. Now, all of these rules that I give you, any rule I tell you that I am doing, or this is the way that I do things, those rules can be bent, those rules can be broken. There are no absolutes in hair. Anybody who's been doing hair a long time will tell you that's absolutely true, because there are so many things that you learn in school, things you learn as an apprentice that are guidelines, that are rules, things that you really do need to hold true, but they can always be bent and broken. When we're cutting hair, we're dealing with really basic geometry and really basic physics. Those laws don't change, but they can be manipulated, okay? Bridges manipulate and defy physics all day long. So there's no reason why hair cutting cannot defy those laws a little bit. Now, it doesn't mean that you can just throw them to the wind. It just means that if you're really good at mastering those techniques and those rules, you can know how to break them or bend them or manipulate them in your favor. So once again, I'm only cutting to my second knuckle, then I reshift and go even tighter down at the hairline. You know, I could have held all of that in just one finger, but I wouldn't have been clean enough for what I consider, you know, precision work. And I don't believe in only precision haircutting. A lot of people will see me teach or see me do demonstrations, and they think that I am only talking about precision, and precision is the only thing out there. It's not. It's not the only thing. But what it is it's the basis for everything. You know, Gerard, the founder of Hairbrain, he is a phenomenal razor cutting instructor. And actually, I remember taking a couple of razor cutting classes from him and realized that it's not the same as precision cutting with a scissor. In fact, it's extremely different because you're cutting on the opposite side of the hand and you're using a lot more tension. But the reason he's such a great razor cutting instructor and talking about shattered and extremely movable hair is because he understands precision cutting so well. One of my friends, Shane Smith, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. That is a phenomenal quote. I love that. I'll probably end up getting that tattooed on me somewhere at some point in time. I love that. And one of my buddies, Jeffrey Goldenstein, just logged on and is watching. Jeffrey Goldenstein is the director of education for Van Michael Salons. He is awesome at cutting hair. He was, you know, a manager at Vidal Sassoon for a long time. He has worked all over the country, in Chicago, San Francisco, Atlanta now. And Jeffrey and I have worked together now. I mean, we're on 20 or 21 years together. And I have to say, if there's one person who I really love working with and love watching cut hair, it's definitely Jeffrey, because he's very inspirational. And going back to the precision haircutting, he is one of the best you'll see out there because of his background and because he's an educator and because he runs a training program. I mean, he has somewhere in the excess of 20 to 40 students that he trains every week or coordinates the training of every week here at Van Michael Salons. And it's because he knows all that precision. But Jeffrey will be the first one to bust out a pair of texturizing shears or bust out a clipper or a trimmer to bend and break those rules. It's not only cutting with, you know, tiny scissors and a straight comb. There's other things out there. I just have a tendency to prefer this the most, and a lot of that has to do with my personal taste. Everybody has their own aesthetic taste, kind of like my friend Shane just said, you know, break the rules as an artist. Well, every artist has a different view. I mean, you know, if you were to take a Picasso painting and a Monet painting and a Kandinsky painting. None of them look anything remotely similar. But are any of them wrong? Are any of them better than the other? No, not necessarily. It's what your aesthetic eye goes towards. So now I'm working around. I'm gonna spray this down just a little bit. I washed this mannequin right before we came on, and the hair definitely that I've already cut is pretty much dried on the underneath. The thing about this is I always want to have hair consistent in moisture. What happens is this hair is a fabric, no different than clothing, or whether you're talking about, if you're talking about denim. If you get your jeans wet and then they dry, they're super tight on you. You throw them in the dryer, they're super tight. If you have a pair of leather gloves, get them wet and then they dry, they're gonna shrink. Just ask O.J. Simpson. And the same thing with hair. As it dries, it shrinks. So with that, this is, if I cut this hair all wet on one side and then dry on the other, the right side that I cut wet would be shorter than the left side that I cut dry, because what I cut would then shrink. So I'm keeping this side just as damp as I did the opposite side. And I'm just working through. One thing I like to do as I'm working down into the nape and as I'm working up, I really work on making sure I lift my shoulder. I don't need to try to do side lateral raises, but I do want to lift my shoulder, and I like to tilt the mannequin just a little bit so that I'm working extremely clean and parallel to my sectioning. I find that ends up working the most consistent for me. It makes it the cleanest for me. You can see I just dropped my shoulder or my elbow just a touch. Once I did that, I sometimes start over exaggerated and then kind of fall into where I want it to end up being, but I never drop all the way down. You can do this once you get down here, but I just try to make sure that all of my work is parallel. Jeffrey and I actually worked next to each other yesterday in our East Cobb salon, and we used to work next to each other every day for a long time, literally right next to one another, and he said he missed hearing my voice. I'll tell you what, it is one thing that I have to say, one of the smartest things I ever did was come into work for Van Michael Salons as long ago as I did, because I got to be around certain people that really have inspired me. One of which definitely was working next to Jeffrey for so long. I've got another friend of mine by the name of Jason O'Neill Gurley. I worked next to him in our Sandy Springs salon for a couple of years. And God, man, talk about somebody who really is amazing with his clients, an amazing hair cutter. I loved doing that. I've gotten to work next to Hannah Evans multiple different times through our careers right next to one another. They actually separated us though because we had a tendency to talk too much. And I don't think that anybody in the salon could hear anything over the two of us. And then, another person that I worked next to for the first year of my career was Brandon Dara, and he'll be doing one of these videos fairly soon as well. And Brandon, man, he was very instrumental in my career. One thing I like to always shout out to everybody out there, I don't care if you've been doing hair for 20 years or 20 weeks, wherever you're gonna end up, make sure that you're going somewhere that you can become something more. There's a statement in life, if you work hard at a job, you'll make a good living. If you work on yourself, you will make a fortune. And the best way to really work on yourself is surround yourself by people that inspire you and keep you interested so you continue to work on yourself. Is that in Sandy Springs? Yes, in Sandy Springs is where I work with Hannah. Jeffrey works at our East Cobb salon and Brandon works at our Buckhead salon. And I've been lucky enough to work at all of the different locations from time to time. And O'Neill worked in Sandy Springs. Gosh, this was about 18, 19 years ago that we worked next to each other. But he now works at our Highlands location. We actually had a Virginia Highlands location for, I think it was open for about 28 years, and then we just moved it down the street. It just opened up 3 weeks ago now, and it is gorgeous. It is a beautiful salon. If you guys are ever in Atlanta and you want to see any of our salons, please feel free to contact me or any of the people on our education team, and we will make sure that somebody at each location will give you a tour of the salon, whether we can be there or not. We're very proud of what we've built here in Atlanta, so we love that idea of people coming in and seeing us. All right, so as I'm moving forward, I am continuing to work back and to the right. Now here's what's going to happen. Here's the center, right here where my little F is. So that's the occipital bone. A lot of people will cut this section here and end. If you do that, what ends up happening is it's going to be longer on the left side because you haven't worked all the way through and continued to work with your lack of over direction because we're working out of the head. So what I'm doing is I'm continuing to work past the center section. Elevating through. You can see I've got my guide on the underneath, very clean, but it's very easy to not want to cut all of it, to just cut the hair that's sticking out. And if you do that, if you don't continue working the rounded line, you end up with weight shifting off to whichever side you cut second. So now you can see here's my opposite side. Here is that extra weight that I would have had. And I just keep working through the whole section. When you cut a rounded shape, I mean, it's very easy to cut a straight line with your fingers. You just cut straight across. But a rounded shape, I usually have to do what would be 2 sections in a matter of probably more like 6 sections. Okay, now I'm combing it down, and I'm going to do, just like I did on the opposite side, I'm going to do a little bit of scissor over combing as my cross check. Combing that down, if you guys can see. My cross check is just, I mean, I'm taking a very small amount off. Anytime you're scissor over combing, well, you can remove bulk with scissor over combing very quickly, but you really need to go back through and refine with it. And when you are doing the refining, I mean, it should just be little shavings that are coming off, like what I've got on my hands. That's looking pretty beautiful. Okay, so now with this shape, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to the fringe. It's going to sound a little out of order or out of character because generally speaking, I cut a fringe last. Would you say that that's 90 degrees on bottom and switch more to 45 degrees? Almost. I wouldn't say that I'm at a true angle because I'm really kind of just creating it through scissor over comb, but I would really actually say at the top, if you want me to go ahead and pull this out, I am probably somewhere in the 75 to 80 degrees. And as I get to the bottom, I'm actually very tight. I'm probably somewhere down in like the 30 degrees because I'm actually going from steeper graduation to lighter graduation. I know that it probably does seem like it's 90 degrees down at the bottom. I'm actually pulling the hair straight out of the head at 90 degrees, but I'm cutting up and out. And because of the natural graduation that the head creates, because of the dip at the occipital bone and the mastoid bones, this is actually more graduation at the bottom or lower graduation. So now this fringe, I know that Jeffrey's watching. I showed them a picture earlier of one of your favorite pictures to show, and that's of Louise Brooks, because that's who I got a little bit of this inspiration from. This is I love Louise Brooks's classic bob with a strong fringe, and I'm just going to take that and make it just a little more edgy and a little more current from today. So what I'm now doing is I'm taking my first section on each side. That's gonna be my outline for my fringe, and then I'm gonna just do a slight bit of rounding. I want this hair to basically be cut right at the top of the brow, because I know it's gonna shrink. I want there to be space between the brow and the fringe, and I'll go back through and refine it again once it's dry, but I'm gonna set that shape in first, right at the brow, so that the hair can shrink up. So the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna do it in two sections. I'm gonna take a horizontal section that's just slightly rounded. Okay. Pulling this up and pushing it out of the way. Can you guys see that? So I'm taking just would you say that, oh no, I already answered that question. Sorry guys. So now from here, I've got my first section of the left side. That's my guide. And I'm going to cut with just 1 finger's width of elevation. I'm not cutting it right against the skin. I want there to be some graduation. So by using 1 finger's width of elevation, the hair is just coming off the head slightly. That's gonna create a bit of a rounded fringe as far as the bevel to it. It's actually one of those pictures, if you look at pictures of Louise Brooks, most of her fringes were all very flat and cut across. I'm actually gonna have it round up a little bit, almost like the pictures that you would ever see of hers that had been set, particularly with a curling iron or a roller and then brushed out, so there was the little bit of a rounded fringe. That's what I'm trying to create right now. I'm gonna work all the way around to the opposite side. And I'm still just using 1 finger's width of elevation. I'm basically putting it right at the brow, top of the brow is what I should say. And then you'll see how as it starts to jump up, I'll have a little bit of space between the brow and the fringe. A lot of people ask me questions because I've done a lot of shooting in my life. I've done a lot of hair for photo shoots throughout my career, and people will ask a couple of pointers. One pointer that I know that photographers love, if you can get a model to be okay with it, is to actually keep the hair from touching the brow. The contrast of the skin makes it so much easier for a photographer to get a really good exaggeration or image from their eyebrows. And with professional models, that is what you want. You want to get their emotion from their face. I mean, you don't pay for these gorgeous girls to not have any emotion. Well, sometimes you do, but really you want to have some sort of an image and emotion that is cast through their eyes. So if you're cutting a fringe and you have someone who's okay with it and you're going to photograph it, put some space, put some skin between the brow and the hair from the brow and the hair from the fringe. You don't want those to connect. All right, next section. So it's just 2 sections. What I'm going to do now, and I'll show you from a side view so that you can see, I'm going to pull this hair straight off of the parting. Okay, that's going to add just a little bit of graduation. So I'm pulling this straight out, my guide underneath, just following it. And I'm going to work all the way around. And just through to the opposite side. All right, and you can see now that fringe, even though it's very heavy, it's got a little bit of movement to it, and that's from that little bit of graduation that I just created. So I'm going to comb that down Because what I don't want, something that is extremely challenging to work with, is if you let hair separate on the fringe and dry that way. You've got to wet it back down if you want to refine it once it's dry. Because if that fringe has the split, you're in trouble. You'll be working on that forever. I'm going to work through the top now. So the image that you guys saw earlier that I had shown that Elevate Hair had put up, it was, you know, a short choppy fringe with kind of a messy bob through the side. I love that look. I love that expanded bob. Now, there's a couple of ways of going about doing that. For me, I'm going to cut it horizontally, but I'm going to use over direction and I'm going to use elevation to create a slight bit of graduation at the bottom so that it will expand outward. I will then go through vertically and remove some weight so that it has some just some movement internally. I want to have some texture to the hair. I don't want it to be just a completely solid bob, but I'm just letting this fall down, kind of just combing it into natural fall to see where everything wants to fall. And at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through in the back. This piece right here above the occipital bone, this is the longest piece of the haircut that I have right now. It's about 2 inches long. I'm going to use that as my guide through the back, and then using over direction, cut everything basically flat and square through to the back. I'll elevate just a little bit horizontally with each section. That's going to gain a lot of length through the front. It's going to be too much length for me through the front, but then I'll refine that off from front to back. And the way I'm going to start this off is I'm just going to work back of the head. I'm going to kind of let everything comb off to the side, and I'm going to take a section, maybe just a little bit more horizontal section, comb that down. Let me grab one of these clips that I just put in your face. Sorry, guys. And the opposite. So now I've got a horizontal line. You guys can see. I am going to cut this right out of the head, okay? So I'm going to comb underneath, pick up my longest piece. I am then going to comb down, and I'm going to cut a flat square shape. Now, I just cut the underneath round, okay? So the underneath was cut rounded, following the head shape. My line is going to be square. Therefore, it's going to connect in the very center, but only there. It's going to get longer and longer and longer, and when you get to the sides, it will have disconnection or an overhang. Right, and then because I'm using the natural elevation of the head, I'm going to get just a little bit of graduation. Okay, so you can see this is connected. This is not, it's disconnected. And each section is going to get a little bit more elevation, as well as a little bit more over direction. So I've taken another horizontal section. I'm once again going to pull straight off the head. Last section was pulled to here. This one is going to be pulled here. It's still graduation, but it's extremely high. It's internal graduation. You know, it's above 45 degrees, and it's up inside the top of the head. So that will remove weight as well as build weight. Sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron, but the reason that's happening is because of where it falls on the head. So even if hair is cut at 90 degrees once you get up into the crown, so let's say hair was cut completely at 90 degrees, once you get above the parietal ridge, it's gaining length, so it's creating some graduation. Mine's not even cut there, it's cut at like a 90 or a 89 degree kind of sense of elevation. So it is graduation, it is building up weight, but it's removing a lot of bulk while doing so. So it will lighten the haircut while gaining a little bit of width through the shape. And now I know if I start thinking about this, if I was to have cut this completely square, or just followed all the way around from the occipital bone, the length that I had here, it would have hit basically right above the cheekbone. I'm over directing back, and that means it's going to be longer than the cheekbone, so then I can put my shape at the front exactly where I want it from the front to the back. Can you move the camera in a bit so you can see your cut? I can do this instead. You can move the mannequin in a little bit more. Is that better for you guys? Let me know if I need to adjust or move any way, shape, or form. So now, see if you guys can see that better. I'll try to stay out of your way as much as possible. So I then cut. Everything is continuing to be a flat, square line, which will create a triangular shape. Triangular meaning getting longer towards the front, or A-line, or diagonal moving forward, whatever you want to call it. I tend to call it triangular is my terminology. So from here you can see I'm gaining length. It's going to continue to gain length basically at the jawline, and then I can strengthen it up in between the it's just a bit dark. All right, let's see if maybe on the other side it would be better if I come over here. Let me get my section. See if we can keep my elbow out of your way. Is that better? So now I'm cutting just a square line, which is going to gain length through the sides. I don't know if that has helped any as far as the lighting or not, guys. You can see what I was saying on the opposite side. The hair is getting longer. It's going to end up falling right in line with the jaw. I'm going to then bring that back. Yes, so somebody asked, so you're moving everything to the back. Yes, I'm moving everything straight to the back. So horizontally, if you're looking at this, I'm sorry, from a profile, the hair is being pulled out straight off of the head. So it's got a slight bit of graduation. It's coming down just a little bit. But then if you're looking at it from the back of the head, it is being pulled completely square. Everything's going back there from through the rest of this panel. And then I'm going to go back through vertically to take a little bit of weight out, and then I will actually take off, I'll cut my outline. So now I've got two sections on each side left. I'm going to do my best to make sure that I can let you guys see this as clean as possible. So my front pieces coming forward, the pieces I'm going to cut are being combed straight back. Okay. So they're going to come right like so. Dip my, I had just spoke to you guys about keeping your elbow up for visual purposes for each of you right now, I am dipping my elbow down quite a bit, because if I lift my elbow up, you'd probably just see my actual elbow. Might give you a nice view of my tattoo, but not a very good view of the actual haircut. Opposite side. Now on the opposite side, I'm going to lift my elbow up quite high so that I stay so now, once again, combing the hair down. And I've got one section left on each side. So I'm just going to comb all of this back. Comb that fringe back down. All of this is going to come just straight back, right off the top of the head. I think I had mentioned at the beginning of this is a very progressive look. It's going to be a very strong look. It's going to look, it's a very cool look. It looks like something that is a lot of fun to cut, which it is. But it is a very simple technique altogether. And that's the idea. I want this, I used the acronym earlier, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I preach that all the time in cutting hair. I don't want to overcomplicate this. So now, I'm almost finished with the haircut. I'm just going to come through with basically a mohawk section through the top. Mohawk section, so now just a mohawk section. Let me scoot her back. I'll tilt her this way for you. So just a section through the top. Center section. Now everything has been over directed back, correct? So it's going to, if you pull it up vertically, you'll see that it gains length through the front. I want that to happen, but I just want to refine off a little bit of the weight. That's going to allow the hair to move just a little bit more. Somebody's liking this. Thank you, Jackie, very much that you're loving this haircut. Because this is something that, it's a look that right now I really think is kind of cool and current. I think you're going to see a lot of these disconnected choppy bobs coming in. I think a lot of people, have been going so long without haircuts right now that when they're coming in, they're like, you know what, cut some hair. I want something, I want something new. I want something fresh. I want to feel a little different. I don't want to feel like my hair is just, overgrown. So once again, just working through the top, taking that little bit of weight out so that the hair moves a little bit easier. By taking just that touch of extra weight, you can see now I've got a little bit of graduation and layering through these sides. What technique is best to use for harsh lines in a haircut? Basically what I just did. So if you think about this, a harsh line is generally created by cutting something extremely heavy. And so if you the more horizontal you cut, the heavier it's going to be. The more vertical you cut, the lighter it's going to be. So what I have a tendency to do is I like to cross-check my shape. Whatever I've cut that it has too hard of a line, cross-check it and elevate just a touch higher. Take that off and see how if that's softened it. From there, usually will do a tad bit of seamless point cutting, but to just soften that harsh line, really elevating your cross check just a touch helps. Love this. Thank you for this education. You're the best, so cute. I will definitely incorporate this. Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. I appreciate that. So now, from here, I'd mentioned, you know, in both the pictures that I liked, it was somewhere in between the cheekbone and jawline. Basically, I want it to fall just beneath the cheekbone. So I'm just combing this hair down with natural fall. I might not even use my comb to hold it because it looks like the hair is just falling in place. And I'm going to connect this point right here with where I want my outline. So I put my scissors in. I'm just cutting my straight line. Looks like I missed the scissors. But you can see, once you're dealing with this, if you just let that hair fall right into place and cut, you can get a really nice clean line. What brand of scissors am I using? People have been asking that a bunch. I'm gonna put the link up as soon as I'm done with this. It's actually Van Michael Scissors, www.vanmichaelscissors.com. And these are actually a pair of 5-inch semi-offset. They are a VG10, and they are, I mean, they're great. They're super sharp, as you guys can see. Just connecting point A to point B. And making sure. All right, so I now enjoying this things. Layers. All right, so now if I kind of just shake her out a little bit, whipping her around, you can see I've got a really nice, soft, strong shape. I'm just gonna blast this top dry unbelievably quick. This haircut, I had mentioned earlier, this haircut could be worn wavy, it could be worn curled. I'm gonna blow dry it, but just very quickly. This does not need to be coiffed. There's no setting this hair into place. I'm just wrapping it back and forth very quickly. And I'm just using a best brush, which is a rounded Denman brush essentially. What that does is it adds just a nice polish to the hair. Actually, these mannequins that I'm cutting, a good friend of mine, Adam Federico, who runs the Federico Advanced Academy, sent me these mannequins, and they're amazing. They smooth out so well. You know, for the longest time, I've always jumped around from mannequin to mannequin. Whichever ones basically were the best deal, just because I cut so many mannequins. But these are a really, really good price point and really very, 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 very good polished hair. And you guys can see this hair is just smoothing out beautifully, very quickly. I mean, this mannequin looks ironed and I've barely even got her dry at this point. And my big thing at this point is once I've got the hair dry, I like to flip it over to cool air and kind of see where the hair wants to fall. I'm really big on not overly manipulating the hair. I want to let the hair kind of fall wherever it should, because that way it's going to look the best at the end of it. You know, if you try to force the hair into a certain spot, as soon as they walk outside, it's going to move and their hair's not going to look as good as it should. But by taking just a little bit of cool air at the very end and just going in, somebody asked what kind of blow dryer. The dryer is a twin turbo. It's Turbo Power Inc. We actually sell those in the salon. There's a million dryers out there right now. I know a lot of people are really big on the Dyson dryer. I've just used a twin turbo for so long that I really love them. The big thing about it is, I don't know if any of you have ever heard this saying, but you don't necessarily know what you like what you know. And I fell in love with twin turbo blow dryers for years. And every time I switch to something else, I just don't love it as much as the twin turbo. So I've been using twin turbos for a long time. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going through. I had a touch of weight right here, basically right where the disconnection starts. So I'm coming through with a slightly diagonal, almost horizontal section. You can see here is my undercut. This is my overhang. I'm doing just a little bit of deep point cutting to let that kind of melt together visually. And I'm just cutting seamlessly. If I pull my line back and it looks like this, once I get done point cutting, it looks like this. Same line. Do you like the Dyson? I like the Dyson. I don't love the Dyson with really thick hair. I find that with really thick hair, because it tends to just take forever to dry. I love the Dyson with fine bleached hair because it smooths out the hair unbelievably well. But I'm not a huge fan of it for hair that is extremely textured, or if I'm really trying to smooth out hair. But you know, I'm the believer that it's not the tools. You know, I am a huge fan of these scissors. I'm a huge fan of this blow dryer. I'm a huge fan of these combs and these clips, but I don't feel like that's what makes me a great hairdresser. Does it make my job easier and more efficient? 100%. And is it necessary to have great tools and products? 150%. But do I have to have this pair of scissors? No. Do I have to have this blow dryer? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I can work with pretty much whatever you give me because I understand shape, I understand the way that hair falls, the physics of it, versus worrying about, you know, do I have the most gimmicky tool? But I am a fan of the Dyson dryers. I just happen to prefer the twin turbos, and that's just my own opinion. Now, I'm combing this hair straight forward. It is going to come to a little bit of a point just because it's longer in the front. I'm just going to take that point and soften it with my shears. And then I'm going to push this hair out of the way and do just a touch of refining to the fringe. So now that the fringe is dry, you can see it shrunk up just a little bit. I want to make sure I clean up this line and this line, just with the tips of my shears. And now I'm going to take the whole section, comb from underneath. I'm not going to break up this line. I'm going to just cut into it vertically, cutting parallel to the hairs, perpendicular to the line. I'm not cutting a chunk out of this whatsoever. I'm just softening the hair so that it can move . a little bit on each corner. Now at this point, I could probably keep cutting on this haircut for another hour just because that's me. Now I'm gonna do just one section, my mohawk section through the top. And I'm gonna stop myself after this because, like I said, I can continue cutting forever. I love cutting hair. I love refining hair. I love looking at every single hair and trying to make sure it is absolutely exactly where it needs to be. But the truth of the matter is, you guys would get really bored watching that after a few minutes. So at this point, I'm gonna stop myself, and I hope that each of you really has enjoyed this. This is what I would consider, you know, somewhat progressive, somewhat edgy, but still very commercial. You know, clients would not freak out seeing this whatsoever, but it is a significantly more edgy version of, you know, a classic box bob. So I love this shape. I love all of you. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I know that I have to thank the entire Hairbrain community for being so awesome and so supportive, and I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope to see you guys again soon. As I said, as soon as I finish this, I'll put in both the link for those scissors, as well as I'm going to put up a head sheet for everybody so that you can use it in the future. Love all of you guys. I really, really appreciate all of you. Have a great afternoon. I hope you guys are enjoying your Monday, and the rest of the week I hope goes great. Good to see all of you. Thanks.